What does it really mean to slip away from life? For centuries, people have wondered about that last stretch of existence, often with both curiosity and unease. Science is now beginning to answer the riddle in clearer terms than ever before, pulling back the curtain on what unfolds inside the body and mind when a person is nearing their final moment. Instead of being an abrupt stop, the process carries recognizable stages, each marked by physical changes and surprising experiences. Researchers examining patients in their final days have noticed patterns that reveal death is not simply a void, but a sequence with its own rhythm. The very first sign often appears as a profound calmness. When an individual is approaching the end, appetite fades and thirst diminishes, making it nearly impossible to consume more than a tiny spoonful of nourishment or a sip of water. Doctors describe this as the start of active dying. It is not painful, but instead oddly peaceful, as if the body is gradually giving permission to let go. Families sometimes worry when their loved one stops eating, but this decline is actually a natural part of shutting down. In this early stage, relaxation dominates, and the person begins drifting toward a quieter state of being. As the process deepens, weariness takes over completely. Imagine the exhaustion of battling a severe flu, where standing feels impossible, yet multiply that tiredness to the point where waking is no longer within reach. This is how extreme fatigue and unconsciousness arrive. In many cases, the person spends nearly all their time asleep, dipping so far that even a strong shake cannot stir them. Yet to them, it doesn't feel like slipping in and out of consciousness. It simply feels like sleep. When patients later revive from unconsciousness in medical studies, they often insist they were only resting. During this time, remarkable dreams occur. Nearly 3/4 of people report vivid visions that bring them together again with departed loved ones. Others dream of preparing for journeys, while some revisit treasured experiences from years long gone. These nighttime adventures are so common that scientists believe they form part of the brain's preparation for departure, almost like rehearsals before the curtain falls. In a sense, the dream world acts as a bridge, softening the path between presence and absence. At this point, ordinary treatments become harder to administer. Swallowing medicine may be impossible, so caregivers rely on pumps or alternate routes to deliver comfort. Yet the person rarely suffers in a conscious way. Instead, they float within their own world of imagery, caught between memory and something larger, guided by a mind that no longer obeys the demands of wakefulness. The body feels progressively lighter to them, as if heavy burdens are being removed piece by piece. Then comes an extraordinary phase that has been spoken of for generations, the vision of light. As the heart pumps less powerfully and pressure drops, the brain reduces its operations to save what little energy remains. But in that conserving effort, something unusual happens. The part of the mind that normally filters and restrains signals loses its grip, and vision areas fire intensely. This is why countless people who survive close brushes with death describe seeing radiant brightness or feeling as though they are being drawn into illumination. Experiments on animals, such as studies of rats in their final seconds, confirm that the visual cortex becomes highly active as the end nears. Similar patterns appear in human cases, pointing toward a common neurological explanation for the age-old tale of the light at the end of the tunnel. Whether interpreted spiritually or scientifically, the sensation is strikingly consistent. As the brain lets go, dazzling visions emerge. As this stage progresses, observers notice unsettling breathing sounds. Loved ones sometimes grow distressed when they hear the rattling in the throat of a dying person, a noise caused by saliva pooling because the unconscious individual can no longer manage their swallowing reflex. The breaths themselves still follow the brain's automatic rhythms, but air moves through the collected fluid, producing gurgling or harsh tones. To family members, it may seem frightening, yet the person experiencing it feels no suffering at all. Their body is in such a tranquil state that they remain unaware of these sounds, even as others interpret them with dread. What appears disturbing from the outside is, in fact, a sign of deep relaxation inside. The story does not end there. An even more mysterious occurrence comes from within the brain itself. In animal research, when the heart stopped, scientists recorded powerful surges of synchronized brainwaves, more organized, in fact, than those observed while the animals were alive and alert. Such activity suggested a burst of concentrated cognition in the instant of death. Naturally, attention turned to humans. Monitors placed on hundreds of patients undergoing resuscitation revealed the same phenomenon. When doctors attempted to restart the heart, the brain occasionally fired with astonishing intensity, resembling moments of peak awareness. Those who returned to life after these resuscitations spoke of profound clarity. Some described floating outside their bodies, observing everything with detachment and peace. Others felt as if their entire life story replayed before them, forcing a review of their actions and relationships. Memories long buried surfaced with crisp detail, as though the mind had opened every drawer at once. In a few remarkable accounts, survivors of cardiac arrest reported knowing, without doubt, that they had been dying, yet instead of terror, they felt drawn towards something familiar, even comforting, as if traveling home. Brain scans matched these testimonies, showing that memory networks and emotional regions lit up in ways strikingly similar to, yet distinct from, the influence of psychedelic substances. A dying man's recorded brainwaves mirrored the effects of DMT, a powerful hallucinogen, though patients consistently say what they experience is not the same as a drug trip. Not an illusion or a dream, but something of its own nature. For them, it feels real beyond doubt, a unique state where consciousness stretches in uncharted directions. Scientists continue to debate what all of this means. Are these surges simply biological flares as neurons lose stability, or do they reflect an opening into dimensions we cannot yet explain? Whatever the ultimate answer, the evidence shows that the journey through death is far from an empty blackout. It is textured, filled with visions, sensations, and even meaningful reflections. To those who have studied it, dying appears less like falling into nothingness and more like crossing through stages designed to ease the transition, reducing fear and inviting acceptance. When people reflect on their final hours, the question often arises, what thoughts surface in the mind at the very end? Are there repeating themes or regrets that nearly everyone faces? Studies and stories from those who have come close to death give us intriguing hints. While physical changes dominate the body, the mind appears to wrestle with meaning, memory, and connection. For some, the brain's disinhibition allows access to vast archives of stored experiences, producing a flood of images and recollections. A man may suddenly relive the birth of his child. A woman may once again hear the laughter of her mother. A soldier may see vivid flashes of comrades lost long ago. In these moments, the brain seems to be weaving a final tapestry, stitching together fragments of a lifetime into a condensed story. Not everyone recalls such vivid sequences. Certain patients brought back from the Edge report that their minds went utterly blank, even though brain scans showed enormous surges of activity. This contrast reminds us that awareness is not guaranteed, and that each experience may vary in depth and clarity. For those who do remember, however, the impression is strikingly strong. Survivors often insist their visions felt more authentic than waking reality, more undeniable than a dream. One patient described it as stepping into the core of himself, surrounded by an overwhelming sense of truth. Another recalled that instead of fear, he felt an expansive calm, as if every unanswered question had been silenced. Among the most common elements in such accounts is a sense of detachment from physical form. People speak of rising above their hospital beds, floating through ceilings, watching medical staff with detached curiosity. Time itself appears distorted, either stretching into infinity or collapsing into a single eternal instant. Pain, if it existed before, suddenly vanishes, replaced by an astonishing lightness. In many narratives, the dying person describes movement toward a radiant horizon, sometimes interpreted as a tunnel or doorway. While skeptics attribute this to misfiring neurons in the visual system, others view it as a threshold beyond material existence. The shared imagery across cultures and centuries suggests that whatever the mechanism, the brain consistently offers a vision that eases transition. Alongside visions, emotional shifts occur as well. Anxiety fades, replaced by acceptance, gratitude, or even joy. It is as though the mind instinctively knows how to soften the blow for itself. Physicians who have observed thousands of patients confirm that terror is not the defining feature of dying. More often, individuals slip into serenity, their faces loosening, their bodies relaxing, as if melting into comfort. Even those who suffered long illnesses often show visible release when the moment comes, suggesting that the brain and body cooperate to create a state where fear dissolves. For loved ones watching, these changes can be confusing. The rattling breath, the closed eyes, the inability to respond. These may seem like signs of struggle. Yet research consistently shows that the one who is dying is not distressed by these outward symptoms. Instead, they are likely immersed in internal landscapes far removed from the bedside. Dreams, memories, and visions may occupy their attention more fully than the voices around them. For families, understanding this can be a source of comfort, easing the fear that their loved one is in pain. In truth, the evidence suggests that most are resting in states of profound relaxation. A fascinating question arises from these studies. Why does the brain surge so dramatically just as life is fading? Some scientists argue it is the last protective burst, an attempt to preserve consciousness a little longer. Others suggest it may be an artifact of neurons losing oxygen and firing chaotically, producing unusual patterns of perception. But to those who have felt it, the explanation hardly matters. They return with accounts of encounters too vivid to dismiss, voices of departed relatives, landscapes of indescribable beauty, or a powerful sense of returning to a place that feels more like home than anywhere on Earth. These descriptions align so consistently that even hardened researchers admit to being unsettled. What we are left with is a portrait of death far more intricate than silence or darkness. The process unfolds in phases, each stage carrying its own peculiar qualities, from the gentle dimming of hunger to the extraordinary fireworks within the brain. At the start, calmness arrives, then sleep overtakes the body, then visions of light appear, then breathing changes sound harsh, though comfort remains intact. And finally, the brain itself explodes in a last storm of activity that can birth astonishing experiences. All of it paints a picture not of despair but of transition. Perhaps the most meaningful discovery is not just what happens inside the body, but what it suggests about how we live. Knowing that the mind may replay our choices or revisit our relationships at the end encourages us to shape our lives with care now. If the final reflection is a mirror, then kindness, honesty, and connection matter all the more. Death, rather than erasing meaning, may amplify it, compressing a lifetime into a final sequence where the essence of who we are is revealed to ourselves. Whether one interprets this as biology or spirituality, the message is clear. The closing of life is neither empty nor meaningless. It is filled with sensation, memory, and sometimes awe. So when the question arises, what does it feel like to die? The answer, at least from the evidence so far, is that it feels like slipping into deep rest, entering extraordinary dreams, moving toward brightness, and sometimes experiencing an overwhelming review of existence itself. It is way different than most imagine. Instead of endless fear, there is often peace. Instead of nothingness, there may be visions. And instead of a sudden end, there is a gentle sequence guiding the human mind and body from presence into absence with more grace than one might ever expect.